Yes.
Is this, Jeff, tomorrow? We have a longer?
And I can leave, let me double check that. I think the 303 number is,
Okay, well, they need to just name themselves. They can.
never mind, that 303 number is not.
It's not, okay.
Thanks.
This is the number. Take it.
Hi, real quick, a technical note. This is Jessica Schneider, and I am not able to turn my video on because the host has stopped it, apparently. Is it possible for that to happen, to turn it on?
I'm gonna try now.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Whew.
Oh, okay, so there was that.
Test, test. Aha.
Okay, so we can, that's two.
All right. Perfect. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Trust Commission meeting. Glad to have you all here. Hope you guys enjoyed the additional week that we had off. That fifth Monday in November was lovely for all of us, I'm sure. I'm just going to go right ahead since we had some technical errors and we need to get started. I'm just going to go ahead and take attendance. So if you could, please just say here or present. And then for those who are on the Zoom call, please unmute yourself whenever you hear your name. Thank you. Catherine Barrett.
Present.
Aaron Black.
Here.
Here she is. Catherine Bullard.
Here.
Gigi Conte. Gigi Conte. All right. Put a little. Jonna Drake.
Here.
Gary Drafe. No Gary. Okay. Tara Hildebrand Schnell. Tara? Sorry, she's not on. Okay. Oh, there she is. Okay. Oops. Oops. Didn't take that away. Okay. Lori Ward.
Here.
Sarah Mayer.
Here.
Jordan Pryor here. Mike Scholl. Here. Jessica Schaus. Jessica Schaus. Okay. Jessica Schneider.
Here.
Ron Stoddart.
Here.
Patricia Swiger.
Here.
Merlin Thompson.
Here.
Shane Vick.
Here.
Natalie Walsh.
Here.
Okay. It looks like we have currently 3 individuals who are absent, and I've made a note of that. All right. Next, we're going to go on to the agenda review. So for those of you who might have a copy with you, you're more than welcome to read along. So for meeting objectives, really just better understanding our focus. We do have a presentation that I was informed of on January 25th that we'll discuss. And we'll hopefully set some goals and what we plan to accomplish for that presentation, and decide on who is going to contribute what. And then we will revisit our requests, because I do believe that there is one that is still pending a vote from the last meeting because we ran out of time. And then any other requests. And then hopefully if we have time at the end, we can plan more agenda items based off of what we've discussed today for the next meeting. And then real quick, since this is being recorded, I do want to just address some comments that I saw on YouTube and Facebook in regard to one of our commissioners. Because the video quality was bad, I think a couple of people thought that Commissioner Shane Vick was a police officer. He is not. He is with Thompson Valley EMS. And so we do understand here at the Trust Commission that that would be a conflict of interest to have officers on our commission. So Shane, we appreciate what you do for our community, but I did want to address that just because I did see some negative comments about that. Okay, next we move on to the approval of minutes. So are there any corrections that need to be made to the minutes?
This is Commissioner Schneider, Jessica Schneider. May I speak?
Sure, sorry.
That's okay. The motion that I tried to make, I believe was not reflected in the minutes from our last meeting, and I would like that to be reflected.
Okay, do you know at what point during the meeting that motion was made?
I can follow up with you because I have the video. As I'm participating right now, I don't want to review it, but it's maybe like an hour 30 in, I'm not sure.
Okay, then let me ask City Attorney, what should we do about that if she has an item that she wants corrected, but we're not entirely sure what to do at the moment?
Commissioner Pryor, I think what you need to do is either postpone approval of the minutes. Actually, that probably is the thing to do if you want to wait, unless other people have better memories and would say that that did not occur. So if you're not sure, postpone the approval.
Okay, then the approval of minutes will be postponed. Or, I mean, she was the only one who spoke up. Let me just ask one more time for the people who are on Zoom, because I didn't see any hands up in here. Is there anybody else who has corrections that need to be made to the minutes? Also, I see that Gigi's here. Okay, so it looks like the only correction we need to make is for Jessica Schneider.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Excuse me. We'd marked Commissioner Thompson not or absent last meeting, but hearing you talk, it sounds like you were on the phone. Is that right?
I was. I tried multiple times to get in the comment and could not accomplish it. So
Okay, so that needs to be adjusted
I
as
don't know
well.
what was the deal, but
Okay, so sorry about that as far as being able to participate, one, and two, we'll mark you as in attendance for that meeting.
As of last week. Okay, are there any other corrections at this time?
Did you get Gigi Conti was on?
Yes, Gigi?
Perfect, thanks. Yes.
Oh, yeah, I marked present. Okay. Then if there are no other corrections at this time, then yes, we will postpone the minutes, which then moves us to our next item, which is public comment. So if anyone would like to participate public comment, please step forward. Okay. Do we have any phone-in or email comments?
Callers, if you'd like to speak during public comment, please press *9 to unmute. Caller with the last four digits ending in 9759. You are unmuted, or I think you're unmuted. Just please accept that request to unmute and provide your public comment. Should be *9.
Okay. You know.
Caller, are you able to, caller at the four digits ending in 9759, are you able to hear me?
Hello, this is Gary Drive.
Gary, I will promote you to a panelist and rename you.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I got it in the right thing. I am here on the line is all. I don't know what happened, but thank you. That's all I have.
So it looks like the only person missing is Jessica Schaus. Okay. All right, and then so it doesn't look like we have any phone and comment, any email comment? No?
No, I don't have any record of any email public comment.
Okay. then I guess we will go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, which is kind of just establishing, what we want to do whenever we focus on this presentation that we were informed of for January 25th, where we'll be presenting kind of an update to council. One thing that I did want to bring up, because I do know that we had mentioned it last week in the meeting, people wondering what route we wanted to take as far as the commission, whether we wanted to focus on things like the utility bills, or if we wanted to focus on the police, specifically what with the police. I will say that in our ordinance, it does say that we should begin with the Loveland Police Department, but it's not limited to that. So I think, at least for the sake of the time constraint that we're in, we should probably focus on the police department and then move out as we go along. But does anybody have any comments, questions, concerns with that? Yes, Catherine?
Commissioner Pryor, did you?
Will you turn on
sorry,
No, you're fine.
this is Catherine Barrett. Did you miss an meeting item, the better understanding of our focus? You've done that? Okay.
That's what we're on right
Okay, I thought we were on. Okay, I apologize.
now. No, you're fine.
Does anybody else have any objections to us, or not necessarily objections to us focusing on police, but did you have a comment, Ron?
I didn't. My only comment is that I believe in reading what we are charged with doing. I don't want to see us become overlapping with the responsibility of the Police Oversight Commission. And I think some of the things that have been sent out, although very, very educational, very instructive, should be forwarded to the Police Commission. They're the ones that are charged with policies and training and those things, and that's what their focus is. I think that if we were to become too involved in how the police department should be run, that's going to negatively impact others' trust in us. So the other issue is that I think that we have to be careful in terms of becoming an investigative body, where we see our role as being to investigate the police department or the Karen Garner case again. Our charge is to determine what the issues in trust is with the community and the city, primarily the police department, and make recommendations as to how to improve that trust. So certainly there'll be some information coming from the review that is being done of the police department that may be helpful to us, but I don't think that our primary job should be to investigate the police department or how they handle the Karen Garner case. That's it.
Thank you, Ron. And I do agree with part of that yes, I especially because I was informed that the Jensen Hughes report should be released most likely somewhere around the time that we would be doing this first presentation. And so I would just be afraid that if we did too much investigative work, something else would come out and either A, prove us wrong, or B, what we're saying would become redundant. So I appreciate that comment. Yes, Catherine?
Thank you. I just want to mention that I think it's really important that even if we're not investigating what happened, we need to learn what happened and understand what went wrong with the 3 highest profile cases that have been in the news: the Karen Garner incident, Alex Domina, and the dog that was shot, to understand where things went wrong so that we can make recommendations on how to correct them and restore public trust.
Natalie, I believe you wanted to go next.
I was going to comment exactly as Catherine did, and she probably said it better than I did. In the ordinance itself, it actually speaks to that. And I think that the majority of council actually asked us to do that. We're coming at it from a different perspective. I'm a little surprised by the timing or the delay now of the Jensen Hughes audit. It was going to be the end of November, and then it was going to be the beginning of December, now it's going to be in January, which is fine. But perhaps we could have an explanation for, the status of that and, what would be the reason for the delay.
Do either of you two have any comment as to the delay at the moment?
Yes, that's, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Moore, for your questions. The first one is the question of the two documents that we're still waiting on. The first one is the IA, and that one, we've talked about different releases, and as we talked about before, because of the process it's in right now, people have said, well, what day exactly are you going to get it? And the problem is, in the process we're in, we don't exactly know where the next steps are because they're not in our control. So we said at the earliest, we talked about a December time period for that, and it could be March, and we don't know yet. It just depends on the process. The second one was the review of the police department, and that document we talked about has been the result of 2 different town hall meetings and interviews with a whole bunch of people. And in that interview process, as I understand, talking to the consultant, they have talked to other people, and their question was always, if we've talked to them, who else should we talk to? And they told them. And so they went out and did even more outreach to different groups, and I talked about some of that before. The idea is to take all that information and not have it listed by group, but by categories of what was said. And so that process is taking them some more time. And like was said before, we're hoping to get a delivery date here soon on that as to when we can expect it. It will come as a draft first, and then it will come as a document second. So we're waiting on that process right now. We understand they're almost finished, so I'm hopeful soon.
Actually, yes. And then Aaron, we'll get to you right after Natalie, okay?
Just briefly, has there been if you may, thank you for that explanation, Steve, Mr. Adams. Has there been an increase in the scope or the budget?
So in the initial scope of the project, they envisioned only one public outreach meeting and then a present results. And we asked them to do an additional public outreach meeting, which was another town hall. So they've done 2 town halls. So that was addition to scope that added some more time because they got more leads, more discussion. We had 35 people at the second meeting. So yes, there's been that change of scope.
And budget as well?
We are negotiating the budget change to that.
Thank you.
Okay. Aaron, and then we will, after Aaron, we'll go with Mike.
Hi, thank you. I just wonder if we're still waiting on these reports, and that might give us a lot of answers as far as what went wrong during that investigation with Karen Gardner specifically. You know, the police department did put out, as well as I think, no, just the police department and Chief Ticer had put out some statements of multiple changes that they were making and some immediate commitments that they were going to make to our city. And maybe we should just try to focus on those to see if they're following up on what they made a public announcements on previously. Some of those being mandatory training on interacting with and recognizing those with Alzheimer's and dementia, expanding their review of all blue team reports, review of their paid leave policy. I just wonder, and there's many more, I just wonder if we can kind of dive in while we're waiting on these other 2 reports, the commitments they've made, and follow up on those in the meantime. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. I really like that suggestion. Mike?
Yeah, I just have to comment. I don't think we're neither empowered nor authorized to act as an investigative body, but I do think we have a very important oversight role that I think we're expected to play, or at least I believe we're expected to play. And I think clearly, from my read, if the Karen Garner incident didn't occur, we probably wouldn't be here today. I mean, the crux of kind of our reason for being is that incident occurred, and I think the violation of trust that occurred within the community. So I feel like that is at the heart of our purpose, and I think to kind of and quite frankly, if you know, if the focus is going to be about like be the community complaint department, or I really will likely resign from this commission. I have no interest in being part of that, because I think I really think that it says right in the ordinance. I mean, the third whereas clause reflects the Karen Garner incident. So for me, I think that's at the heart of why we're here today. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Ron.
Would it be appropriate for us to perhaps have some sort of liaison relationship with the police commission, so we have an idea of what they're doing, so that we're not doing some of the same things that they may be doing? For instance, the steps that the police department was supposed to be taking, and we're trying to get an idea of whether that's been done, how that's coming along. I think the police commission is doing that, and if they are, then it may be helpful for perhaps Jordan, for you and the chairman of the police commission to have a sit down, which would only be 2 people to make it out, would save us some time, and get an idea of where we're going.
Fair enough. Attorney Garcia, what are the rules on that? Are we allowed to align ourselves with the police commission that way?
Chair Pryor, I'm not sure that there is a clear understanding of what that when you're talking about the commission, really you're talking about this independent consultant who is running this assessment of the police department and who has conducted the Karen Garner investigation. So it's not a separate commission, it is an outside consultant. If you wanted to get a sense of what the outside consultant is doing, I don't know that that would be an issue. You could certainly go through Steve to see if you can make that connection. I think it is a different thing in terms of what has been spoken about in terms of the commitments made by the police department. It sounds like there's interest in understanding how they followed through on that. And I think it was more than the police department. I think it was also the city manager's office. But to understand, where those are, and, that's separate, and that is directly with Steve. He would be the liaison. He would be the contact to let you know how those are developing.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's what they're talking about, PCAP.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shane.
Thank you. So for that clarification, the Police Citizen Advisory Board, I don't think that there is a nexus between what you're doing and what the assessment is doing and what the Police Commission Advisory Board is doing. I'm not sure that that has the same connection that you think it does. But I'm also not part of that commission. I don't take, I don't read the minutes. So I guess I would defer to Steve if he has more information in terms of what the Police Citizens Advisory Board is doing, but I think it's different than what you're doing.
Right. Well, I think more so what Ron is asking is really just, in some way being able to sit down, me as the chair and whoever their chair is, and to sit down and go, okay, this is what you're trying to accomplish, this is what you're currently doing, and just making sure that we don't have overlap. So then, the things that we're bringing up to council and to the police department don't seem redundant.
Chair Pryor, there is no issue with that. I think you would find that there's not an overlap, but I think it's a great idea to check in and make sure that that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I can facilitate that meeting.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And then Catherine?
I would just note that I looked on the calendar today and noted that the Police Advisory Committee was not meeting tonight.
Lori, did you have a hand up? Did I see that?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, so and then I guess circling back to what we've been talking about. So it sounds like there's still a little bit of, we're really trying to figure out whether or not if we want to be an investigative body or not. But I do think, at least to go based off of the first point that's on the agenda, I think that it does seem as though we are all on board to focus in on just the police department at this time, rather than doing things like the issues with the billing with the city of Loveland and other things. Am I correct to assume that? Okay, perfect. I do also want to take a moment to discuss the presentation itself. I had a sit down, me, Jeffrey, Steve, and Justine had a Zoom meeting together, and the presentation is going to take place January 25th at City Council. Based off of what they had said, it sounds like it's going to be very fluid in the way, or I guess the output of the presentation. So it doesn't seem like we have a ton of guidelines as far as how we want to accomplish this task, which gives us a little bit of wiggle room to work with. But I do think, for the sake of how much of a time crunch we are in right now, it would be best for us to definitely find an area of focus for that presentation. So I do have those areas pulled up from our last meeting. And the areas of focus based off of, the input that you guys have given me over the past couple of weeks is data collection, communications, community relations and events, policies and training, community resources, and litigation. Now, based off of what was said about the Jensen Hughes reports, obviously that can affect some of these particular areas. Like, I know that might affect the policies and training, so that might potentially be something that we stray away from. But I would love to hear what you guys want to focus on, because we're actually pretty ahead of time right now. So I would love to hear from you guys. Natalie.
I think one of the things that's been confusing in the community has been what activities, whose activities gave rise to the litigation. And the police officers were dismissed from the civil litigation today. That's consistent with what's been, reported. The city announced it was for the city's behavior, which isn't the police officer's behavior. It's the behavior of the city. And they announced a $3 million settlement a couple months ago. And I think it's still in process. I haven't seen anything dismissing the city, which would mean that the settlement was finalized. Excuse me. I think that if we could have a very honest and open conversation, and it might be something that's more of a study session so that it's not so, like in 8 minutes you have to describe something that the city's been juggling with because I think what happened is, by the way things were reported in the newspaper, by the way the city's press release read, by the complexity of civil rights litigation, that a message was miscommunicated. And I've heard citizens say, I can't call the cops in Loveland. And the behavior that led to this litigation, and excuse me because people are present here that are in the management level, but it was management level behavior, I think, unless I'm really missing something, that ended up with a $3 million liability. And so, I've watched enough council meetings to appreciate that the majority of council are, businessmen. They say that. They look at things from a business perspective. So, you're either kind of like a compliance person, and everyone's happy that, Karen Gardner was compensated, quite well, if you look at the type of settlements that come out in Colorado. That's pretty steep. But it wasn't for the actual, it's kind of in a more complicated way. Yes, if the arrest hadn't happened like that, if the neglect, at the jail, all that stuff hadn't happened, none of this would be here. But what was really kind of going on was failure to train and failure to supervise. And I think the one thing we can clear up is that And, I'm not, people do make mistakes. And everyone's in a world where we work with people that make mistakes and they're given a chance to be rehabilitated. But we need to know that people are going to read their emails. So it's not so much, we need to know that the management is trained and that they're being educated on what to avoid. Because if we're just kind of gonna go hit and miss, be like, okay, we can't beat up old ladies. Okay, check, we learned that one, and now we're gonna get $150,000 report telling us not to beat up old ladies. And then the next thing, it's like, oh, we didn't know about that one. But just like, be schooled, be educated, enter the world where liability is managed and avoided, and communicate well. So, this whole time, all these months I was going, first I was like, how can someone, not read their emails? I mean, that was hard for me to believe, but to tell you the truth, I believe it. I actually believe it, which was the more frightening scenario. So it's not like, how are these cops trained? And from a very simple perspective, what we need to know, and the most heartbreaking council meeting was when all the officers were there. And the union guy stood up and one of the other cops stood up and they were being like, we're the good people and why does everyone hate us? We don't hate you. It's that the way, and I don't think this was intentional, but the way the city communicated the liability, it was misleading because we weren't in the inner conversations. And so I think it would be nice for people to understand and correct me if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. It's happened before, and I'm always happy to admit it. But you read the complaint and you will see that the liability of the city is based on failure to train and failure to supervise in different formats. Mm-hmm. The police officers who heard the pop were dismissed. Mm-hmm. Whatever happens in criminal court with the two, that got stuck there.
Well, so Natalie, real quick, I don't mean to cut you off.
To the thing that we can do now, mm-hmm. we can learn that. That doesn't take any investigation. That just mm-hmm. takes a discussion. It takes reading the materials, talking through it, understanding, reading the press release, figuring out if that's true, if that's what's going on. Mm-hmm. I did have a couple things in my list to, block out. There was no defense materials.
Right, I remember you saying that.
The materials that were provided. But, I asked for specific things. Maybe there's whole bunches of stuff that, was traded amongst the parties. But this is a one session discussion. And it doesn't take a lot more than that. It just takes some understanding and some, attention.
So real quick, and then Patty, you'll be next, and then Aaron after Patty. You're suggesting that we look into management level employees with LPD?
That we look at the complaint,
mm-hmm.
that we look at the press release,
mm-hmm.
and that if anyone at a management level wants to walk us through that,
okay.
That we have those conversations.
Okay. Walk through.
Can I get clarification on are there individuals that you're hoping would participate in that, or you're suggesting should participate?
I think the city would identify who are the policymakers. It's hard to tell. I suspect that it's the chief of police. And this is also, it's also a role, going for, it may be him for, the next 50 years. But it's a role. So it's the chief of police, the city manager, based on city manager Adams mentioned the other day, it may actually be some council persons, because as I understand it, I don't know. There was just, you made a comment that your management style is that if council wants to interact with your people. I don't know. So it's for the city to self-identify who the policymakers are. But I assume it would be at least those two.
Okay, so looking at whoever the policymakers are and having them give us a walkthrough as to what happened, where were the breakdowns, why is this according to policy, why is this against policy, and things like that.
I just have a follow-up to add on to Commissioner Wong.
Okay.
I actually would really appreciate that opportunity because I have just fundamental questions that I would like to ask.
Okay.
To better understand kind of from his perspective what happened and you know what he sees going forward and where the breakdowns occurred. So I'm very much supportive of that approach.
Excellent. Okay, then I have it written down that you two both like this idea. Patty.
And my thought ties in with theirs, just throwing this out there. The timing of the incident and then the knowledge of the incident, there is quite a big time frame in there. And I realize not everything that goes on at the police department is my business, but I sort of consider it my business. And I think a lot of people, their distrust built up because of that time. And would we have ever known about this had that lawsuit not been brought?
Okay. Erin?
Thank you. I concur with Patty. That was one of my biggest questions is had Karen Garner's team of attorneys not released that, would we have ever known as a public about that case? And secondly, speaking to Commissioner Walsh's comments, where does our risk management department within the city fall in with all of these questions that we're wondering? I mean, we've got, obviously, the $3 million settlement was paid by our CIRSA, our city's insurance, is what I imagine. And they offer a tremendous amount of resources to our city. That's one of my questions is for further, in the future, risk management. Is our city utilizing all of the services that CIRSA provides to us as our provider? That's a question I would like, is how does our risk management department, are they the ones that are sending out these press releases, or is this city manager Adams' office sending out these press releases, or is it Chief Ticer's office sending out? Who's sending out the press releases is what I'd like to know. Thank you.
So are you, just based off of what Natalie's comments were, are you wanting to, I guess, are you proposing that we add risk management into that walkthrough with the policymakers as well?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Seen a ton of other hands.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So do we need to make a motion then to get Chief Ticer in here to talk with us? Is that something?
So I don't think that it's just Chief Ticer, but yes, but yeah, I
Like move these things.
Yeah.
So we get.
Yeah, so this is great, we're ahead of time. I make a motion that we have a walkthrough with management level individuals, both policymakers and risk management associated with LPD. Are there any comments, questions, or concerns about the motion? Shane.
I agree with everybody. The timing of all this and which is what built the distrust other than the act itself. Will that information come from the IA investigation? Those questions that everybody's asking, it has to be in the IA investigation of who covered up, why it covered up, why it took so long, why it went to the attorney, has to come out of that IA investigation. I just wanted to make that comment so everybody kind of understands, because that investigation is going to be very, very thorough, especially from a third party, just from my experience in emergency services, period. So those answers, a lot of that will probably come out of that when that gets released. So my thought.
Right. I do think that the one issue though is unfortunately, we don't know what's going to be in that report. And I feel like pretty much anything, according to what our areas of focus are, pretty much any of that could be applied to this report potentially. So it's, we just don't know what's going to happen, unfortunately. Yes, Mike.
Thank you. I kind of bifurcate kind of the questioning, or the kind of my areas of interest, because on one half there's questions specific to the Karen Garner case, that what happened, when did it happen, who knew, when did they know, the standard question. But the other half of the question that I want to ask is, and some of the functional pieces that I'd like to get down to is, it's just simple things like from a public layperson's, like, at what point do you trigger an investigation? Like, at what point does it rise to the level of something that's considered an incident? At what point do these things occur, and how do they move up to the chain of the command, and how are they communicated to the civilian, or the city council and the city manager, and at what point and what actions are taken, and how much of this is shared with the police advisory commission, and so on and so forth, and just questions that are generic, but obviously have some would apply, but that are more generic to understand, like, because at some point within that process there was a failure, a breakdown. And so what I want to understand is, what is that process exactly, and then in looking at the other half of it, trying to understand where did it break down in this this incident. So I think that some of those questions will be answered in the report, but I think there are other parts of it too that I think go beyond that we need to be very conscientious of than it's just contained within that incident.
Yeah, go for it.
Just a clarification, because I agree with Mike. My fear is if we call them in before the report's released, the answer is going to be, I can't answer that until the report comes out. Because there's a lot of things that we get investigated in my job that until the investigation comes out, that's our answer. I can't say anything until the official report comes out, and I don't want to waste our time.
So one second, Natalie. A potential workaround for that, because the presentation is supposed to be to council. My thinking is we do, some brainstorming, figure out what questions we want to ask. We take time to, really get this all together. And the interviews, at least in my head, how I thought it would go is we wouldn't have the interviews till after the presentation, which would then hopefully also be after that report is released too. Natalie?
So I think I was thinking a little bit more focused so that it could be within the next 4 weeks. And I wasn't sure that Chief Ticer wanted to, make himself, available here. You can always not investigate because someone else is investigating. It's just true for everything. And I think that's one thing that we need to try and not get trapped into, so that we don't do our job. It's just a way of procrastinating. So there's ways we can do our job. Mm-hmm. I think that on a very simple level, the city can clarify. And I agree with Aaron, it might be risk management, it might be, communications, it might be Steve's job, I don't know. But the city can clarify and own what happened. The buck stops here. What's happened since we all learned about the Karen Gardner incident was it kind of got passed on as if it were the street cops. And that's what needs to be clarified, because, every time the cops, I live on 8th Street, the cops go, I wave, and they wave back, and, and I always feel bad because I think, gosh, there was just such miscommunication that created such a horrible level of distrust. Once we start, pulling up things and talking to, and, people are going to get defensive, and it is going to get, worrisome. And there's, it's hard to help people look at how they can do a better job. But before we do that, I just think we need to help the community understand that the liability, the $3 million is being paid for the city the non-action for the city, not for the actions of the cops. And I think that we can just bridge a whole big gap by doing that. So I would just like to have that discussion and then add in the data. That was my thought.
Okay. We got a lot of folks. So Catherine, Aaron, Tara, Ron, and I will write it down.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate Commissioner Black's post that while we're waiting for reports, there are things that we can be working on, such as the commitments that were made regarding the LPD and the city manager changes, the motion that you just made, which I would love to second. And it's just what we need to be doing. We need to be doing something.
Aaron?
Thank you. And that's all I was going to reiterate is that the police department put out changes that they were going to their department policies and practices that they were going to make changes to. And I think we should follow up on that and report back so the public can see if they've worked on those. Also, the city of Loveland, just like Commissioner, I believe, who was that just spoke? But just to reiterate what she said, the city of Loveland said they were going to make immediate commitments, and there are quite a few of them, including the assistant city attorney now sitting at police headquarters to help review use of force cases dating back to 2019. I think there are a great many things between the city and the LPD that we can work on right now before those two reports come out.
Thank you. Tara?
So this is, not too far off. So when we were talking about the policymakers, one of the things that really disturbed me about the incident was that one of the officers was a student and had worked in the schools with our children. And so I was really concerned I would like to know how they choose the officers who work with our children and that we place them in the schools with our children and give them so much access to the children in our community. And I know there's a lot of distrust within that aspect of it. So I don't know how the police works with the school district, but I think it would be really helpful for the community if we're going to build trust for us to know, to make that very clear, and how these officers end up in the schools with our children and what their responsibility, just to make that more clear. And I think that'll help bridge a lot of so with the policymakers, I was just thinking
right. Yeah, so far it seems like we're really, a lot of the added things still kind of fall under that policymaker. Ron, you had a comment as well.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I am misstating what Commissioner Scholl mentioned earlier, but I think there's a big difference between us understanding the process and investigating incidents. I think it would be very helpful if we could have somebody come in that would describe what happens when a complaint comes in. What happens in terms of when does it get referred for an investigation? When does it become an incident? I think was the term you used. And then at what point do other people get involved? In other words, at what point does the commanding officer or the assistant chief or the chief or other people, policymakers, get involved? So having somebody present to us what that process is, I think would be very helpful.
Excellent. And then, Aaron, is your hand still up from the last go round, or did you have a new statement? Okay.
No.
Okay, so it sounds to me like we're pretty much all on the same page. I mean, even the additional things that were added in would still kind of fall under that policymaker outlet. So we're wanting to know, who is, what are the processes? How do complaints come through? At what point does it become a problem? At what point do we investigate? We want to ask questions about, what does the screening process look like for officers to become the SRO at our public schools? But again, I do think that that still falls under all of our policy and risk management. So, I mean, if anybody else has anything additional to add in, I'm willing to listen, but it sounds like we're all kind of on the same page here. So, okay, then I'll motion again. So, I make a motion that for our area of focus for the report on January 25th is that we have a walkthrough with management level individuals associated with LPD, including their policymakers and their risk management.
Commissioner, I'm sorry, Chair Pryor, this is Jessica Schneider.
Yes, ma'am.
Can we add to that, or is this like the end of that report?
We have time. You can go. What's going on?
Well, thank you. You probably already know what's going on. I would like to also add to that report how we as a commission are providing access to the public to participate in these conversations, to see what we're doing, how we're working, and to access that easily. So I wanted to put that out there before.
Okay. What I'll do is I'm still going to keep the original motion that we had, but I'm going to make that its own motion because I do think that that is important, but they're a little unrelated in my eyes.
Cool.
Catherine.
Thank you.
That you have laters, things that were deliverables
Mhm.
that we're waiting on, and I thought a Facebook page was one of those.
Okay.
Which would sort of tie into what Commissioner Schneider was just saying.
Perfect. Okay. Then I'll reiterate the motion one more time because I don't think I ever got a second, but I motion that for our January 25th presentation to City Council, we propose a walkthrough with management level individuals associated with LPD, including their policymakers and risk management.
City manager.
It's city manager. City manager. Well, yeah, city management. Okay. Whoops.
Is this working?
We'll go Merlin and Mike.
Just a clarification on that. Are you saying that you want that done before the January 25th meeting?
The idea is that we have our interview questions set up, the area, what other focuses that we want, because I know that some individuals want to talk about the SROs and how that screening happens. I know that Mike has more generalized questions, really figuring out what our interview process is going to look like, and setting up the presentation that way, because based off of what Shane was saying, and I do agree with it, most likely this report will answer some of these questions. And I think that it would be better for us to interview them after that report comes out, because there might even be additional stuff that we can ask based off of the report too. So, Mike?
Yeah, I want to clarify when you keep saying presentation on the 25th,
Mhm.
what is it? What do you actually mean? Because I don't think, we don't have to ask permission from City Council to interview or to discuss, to request the presence or the participation of some of these people.
Mhm.
Are we expected to give kind of an update presentation to City Council? Because my understanding with a motion is that we're going to extend an invitation, so we obviously can't compel someone to come and speak to us, but we would like in good faith to extend an invitation to city leaders, city management, police leadership, or police management to come and to begin to address some of these issues. I would not think that this would be the last time that we may ask them to come and speak.
Gotcha.
To me, I don't know if we're kind of combining two things kind of awkwardly in one motion, and because
So I think I might have been the one that was confused. I guess I must have interpreted it wrong. When it comes to interviews, are we just allowed to ask and they can come in? Okay. All right. Well, then if that's the case, if we can just bring them in on our own, I mean, again, I know that report's going to come out, but then we're going to have overlap regardless of what we do, most likely. So, okay.
And I would think that we'll have, there's questions that we can ask before. I think there'll be questions that we'll have after the
Mhm.
report comes out. I think, so I don't think that, we're going to have one bite of the apple. I think I would hope not anyway. At least if we are operating kind of with good faith with the city and the city leadership. So, I mean, I'm not going to make an official motion, but perhaps I'll suggest one that maybe we have them or entertain a motion to extend an invitation to Chief Tyser or a representative of the police department to come talk to us about some specific issues. I mean, I've kind of identified some that I'd like to talk about. I know Commissioner Walsh, and I'm sure Commissioner Vick and Swigert and Tara have, or Commissioner Hildebrand have other questions as well. But I do think it would be helpful and I think enlightening to us to start to kind of build out our focus a little bit if we can start to get information directly from the source.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Shane.
I do believe the presentation and what we're talking about are two separate things. The presentation that you two are going to give is how much progress we've made. So in this first quarter, we've defined the 8 areas of trust. We've defined what we're going to do and why we're going to do it.
Right.
So I would assume that the second quarter progress report then would include all these questions and interviews and that kind of stuff. So that's my clarification is this progress report for the first quarter should just say, hey, this is what we've done. We've met each other. We know each other. We've discussed each other's things. We've come up with 8 pillars of trust, and now we're going to move forward here. That's my thought on that.
Aaron and then Catherine.
I just want to concur with Commissioner Vick. That was exactly what I was going to say. There's 2 different things you guys were talking about. Our report, our first report to City Council, just updating. And I would add to the 8 pillars of trust. We discussed our process for requesting information from the city. We've got that figured out. We discussed rules of engagement within our own meeting. We set a priority of the LPD and the Karen Gardner case. I mean, that's just our progress report, I assume, for the January 25th, aside from, so that's completely different from the motion to get the individuals to attend. Okay.
Right. I'm not entirely sure how I ended up getting confused, but I did get confused and thought that we were to have to go to council to get a motion for this. So I apologize. That's on me.
No worries.
We all work full time, and I hope you guys realize that I have brain farts sometimes. So, okay, Catherine.
I love the 8 pillars that we've discussed. I have some serious concerns about them and want to add one and move one from a pillar to just a comment. Are we done with the pillars?
I mean, we can always revisit those. I do think that right now, at least with what we're focusing on, that should be the priority. We might maybe have some time later on as we just discuss some other stuff. Sorry, I have like 1,000 papers up here. Yeah, maybe an agenda item for the next go round. Sure. And then Natalie.
Oh, I was just going to ask, just to kind of, because we did get a little confused here.
Mhm.
You started out, you said the 4 of you had a phone Zoom call.
Yes.
And that's when you discussed what this January 25th was. So
Correct.
what was that discussion? I think maybe we missed.
Yeah, so basically the discussion was just, when it was going to be, kind of what the expectations were around it, and then what the format of the presentation itself was going to be. And, again, there's really not much of a format. Expectations is really just an update. It didn't go a whole lot deeper than just an update. And that's about where we're at now. It wasn't a very long call.
Okay, and is that consistent with what we are now doing?
Correct, yes, it is. So, okay. We're up there. Okay. Then let me redo this and let me change up my language here a little bit. So we are making a motion to have a walkthrough with management level individuals with LPD, policymakers, risk management, and city management. And this is separate from the presentation.
I would like to second.
Here, this
That's what we were. I second.
Okay.
You kind of listed up, you repeat that again because you,
Sorry if it was fast. A walkthrough with management level individuals associated with LPD that includes their policymakers, their risk management, and then city management was added in.
at a one of our meetings.
Correct, yes.
So I would just.
Oh, sorry about that. Yes, at one of our meetings, yes.
I would include that in the motion, be very clear. And
Okay.
in the motion, what that invitation, yeah, the next or the earliest convenient meeting.
Mhm.
And I would also, I mean, this is just my opinion, and so I don't want to, but I would just offer to make a motion to say we would invite Chief Ticer or senior level management to come in more than, and as a, because it's very vague. I mean, you know, and who would, if I were reading that both from the chief, who are you going to send? So
Let's identify.
yeah, let's just
say who we're gonna invite.
Okay.
The city manager will help us identify who in risk management is well.
Okay. City Manager Adams, who is involved in the risk management with LPD?
I think you're too deep, commissioners. What you need to do is ask me to bring the appropriate staff to have a walkthrough.
Okay.
Stop. And I will tell you who that is.
Okay. Who is that?
Well, that's who you've talked about. You've talked about some of them. I'm trying to, and I need to go back and look at, okay, what I heard today from the commissioners was this. I need to make sure I bring my risk management department. By the way, it's embedded under our HR department, risk is. You haven't mentioned HR, but HR would need to come to this discussion too as well. And so there is that, and then there may be some other groups that I might consider bringing. So I think telling me who to bring is not in the spirit of what we're trying to do here. You have a mission for me. You have given me some areas that you want to talk about, and I need to bring the appropriate people to that discussion.
Okay. Catherine?
So how about naming Chief
Ticer.
Ticer and City Manager Adams and others as determined by the city manager as needed?
Okay.
I will say this. I want to take a little offense because we weren't telling, and I think part of it is, as a commission, we're going to ask in good faith. So I'm not. I want to be clear. I mean, I know you have a position and a role to play, but I think as a commission, we do have the right to ask and to seek that participation.
Shane? Oh, sorry.
Right. If I can clarify, I just want to make sure you don't forget some people. So I'm trying to help in this process too as well.
Shane?
So just my limited knowledge of what happens and trying to put all this together. There's a thing out there that the Loveland Police Department has. It's called a Blue Team Report. So I would offer to Steve Manager that we find out how the Blue Team Report process happens, because truly, if I'm understanding that correctly, once that Blue Team Report is filed and filed correctly, that's how everything happens. If the Blue Team Report isn't filed, nothing is investigated. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So just like if I did a patient wrong, I have to file incident report on my side that I did something bad to a patient, which starts a whole investigative process. So I would encourage us as a commission to ask the city management, how does the Blue Team process work? And then invite those people, how that process works, how that gets investigated, how it goes up the chain of command, and who's ever involved in that process is probably the people we need to talk to. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Does that help, Mr. Adams?
Yeah, thank you. It was mentioned early on. I think Commissioner Walsh was talking a little bit about that area too, but yeah.
So I think the best thing for us to do, because I mean, we're not going to have 7 people that we interview in a singular meeting. So I like Mike's idea that we just go ahead and just for the next meeting that we have, or at least whenever it is time to start interviewing, the first interview would be Chief Ticer. So I've written it down, so I think this will be a little bit of a better explanation. I am motioning that we have a walkthrough specifically with Chief Ticer. Sorry. I am motioning that we have a walkthrough specifically with Chief Ticer at one of our meetings, and we will determine that whenever we get to planning the next agenda, but that we have a walkthrough with Chief Ticer. Yes, Natalie.
Yeah, I'm just going to clarify if I may. Just because scheduling issues and availability and stuff like that. So why don't we have it, if you want to start with Chief Ticer, that's fine. I would start with City Manager Adams, because he's here and he could tell us his availability and his willingness to participate, which I think he's already indicated. But that way, if Chief Ticer isn't available, we're not like sitting here with nothing to do for the next meeting.
Okay. So are you wanting to add in the clause of and/or appropriate individuals as determined by the city manager?
Well, no, starting with the city.
Oh, starting with the city manager. Okay.
And I would just, and I don't mean to kind of parse language, but I will say, we don't have the authority to compel them to come here.
Mhm.
So I think we should just have a motion to extend an invitation. Is it? Because I think that kind of expresses something in good faith and doesn't overstep our authority, as opposed to just saying we want them to say, just say, on behalf of the commission, we would like to extend an invitation to Chief Ticer to come and speak to us and discuss issues related to police procedure and so on and so forth. And at the earliest convenient, earliest possible regular scheduled meeting of our commission, and put the onus on, because I think that, to me, I feel more comfortable because, we're not, like I said, we don't have the power to compel him.
Right.
And I wouldn't want to exercise that. I mean, I wouldn't want to get into that. So I think we should just kind of keep it in good faith.
Okay. So extend an invite. Yes, Merlin.
I've got a question on that. And I think this is outside of the motion, but I would wonder if you would put together a list of questions that we for sure would like to have addressed. And then with the knowing that maybe as things went on, we'd have a few other questions, but to give them an idea of what exactly is it that we're trying to find out.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Okay. What was that?
Does Jeffrey have that down?
I thought he was about to tell me something. Okay. Then, yes.
I'd like to add one clarification, because I certainly don't want this group to be frustrated by all of your efforts to try and figure a process, and then it doesn't work out like you're thinking. Recall that what you're going to do, in however manner you do it, is really make a recommendation to the city manager. The city manager at the next meeting will make a determination based on your recommendations about which ones he can fulfill, and which ones he cannot. In conjunction with that, you obviously must realize that we are still in litigation. In fact, I was sending out a message about an hour ago asking what the status of that settlement is with the Karen Garner. Anyone who's involved with litigation knows that you do not mess with the litigation. You do not try and interview people who are part of the litigation or critical to it until that document is signed and finalized. So to the extent that Commissioner Scholl is interested in process, I think that is terrific, to really understand how it works. But as Chairman Pryor has pointed out, none of the information is really going to be accessible until not only that settlement is signed, but we have the assessment released and the Karen Garner internal affairs investigation released, so you don't run into inconsistencies. So I just don't want your expectations to be dashed because you're thinking you're going to get to be able to talk to the chief and ask some tough questions about Karen Garner. He would not be in a position to answer those.
Right. Okay. Real quick, sorry, Erin had hers up first. Erin?
I just wanted to propose that Commissioner Scholl make the motion for the requesting information about processes. If he could make that motion, that'd be great.
Okay. Mike, after Natalie, go for it.
I just wanted to clarify. Thank you, City Attorney Garcia, for that clarification. My original thought was in keeping with understanding that the settlement had not been finalized and the city had not been dismissed from the lawsuit. unlike the officers themselves, have been dismissed. So my thought was the discussion was off the complaint, which is a public document, and the city's public statements that it had settled the case, that it was nearing settlement. I have it here in the exact language. And that the discussion could be just about the conceptual roles of how that works. Because I mean, civil rights litigation is attenuated. And I mean, there's a gut sense that everyone has. But, so I thought that the conversation could simply be about how this is a management level liability versus a street cop liability, or to clarify that, so that we were at least kind of calming the waters a little bit, and that none of that has to do with the specifics about the settlement, or if the settlement's going to go through or not, but that it had to do with, that's why I was going off the public document. So one of the reasons why I asked for what was exchanged in discovery was to kind of understand at what level the case was set. And so, I mean, if you made that, you kind of blocked out an area, which I understand and I get. But in order to make some progress, because the public is frustrated by, it's in litigation, all this stuff. And I think that that's kind of something, it's on paper. It's a paper discussion, and maybe that's something that, I mean, I think in my proposal that I gave to Jordan, my thought was that maybe we could have the city's, the CIRSA lawyer, or somebody just explain, how that works. Where it's the city's liability. It's not the cops. I mean, it's from the cops, those specific cops' activity. But just to have that conversation. Would that fall into what you consider still confidential?
Commissioner Walsh, I think if you're interested in the process, and we could get someone from CIRSA who is not related to the case, just come in and explain the process to you, that would be absolutely okay. And I think that would be helpful to understand how CIRSA comes in on these types of cases to work with the city. But talking about the specific case or the lawyer involved in the case, that probably goes too far, because one of the things you always have to remember about a settlement is there's no admission of liability in settlements, right? Until that document's signed, we're really trying to hold everybody still and just say, let's get through the process, and then we can maybe take a deeper dive and look and see what happened afterward.
Thank you. I think that'd be really helpful, because I think that the distinction between the civil liability of the cops and the civil liability of the city was kind of lost in all the communication. And I agree, it doesn't need to be about this specific case. It's just a little primer, and I would imagine it's like even the CIRSA lawyer that goes around to all the cities and teaches everyone about civil rights litigation, could do a thing, something like that. Thank you.
So, just one second, Mike. So, actually, I'm going to cross out this note. You go ahead.
Well, then if I would move to, sorry now.
It's difficult.
I would ask for a motion on behalf of the community trust I would ask for a motion to extend an invitation to Loveland Police Chief Ticer to speak on behalf of the Community Trust Commission to speak to the Community Trust Commission regarding policies, procedures, and other issues related to how the police department deals with incidents and if that's using a good, how the police department addresses arrests and incidents, unrelated at this stage to the Karen Garner case. And I would also add, as part of the motion, that we would reserve the right to to ask him to extend a further invitation at a future date to address the Karen Garner case when it is appropriate.
Okay.
I second that.
I second that as well. All right, then, all in favor, please raise your hand.
I have one more discussion item, Chair Pryor.
Is, City Attorney, is it too late?
I think the motion, I didn't hear you ask for those opposed. I don't know if you've done that part yet. But
Okay, but so.
You're in the middle of counting the votes, so I think if you.
Okay.
Reopen it or go on after this discussion, go on to another discussion on this.
Okay, Aaron, we might have to get that discussion after I get those who oppose. Those who oppose, please raise your hand. All right, so it passes by majority vote. So we will be extending an invite to Chief Ticer to come in and answer questions about policy and basically the management level stuff that is not associated with Karen Garner. So, okay.
I want to make sure that we still it's not an invitation.
Right. Correct, yes. Okay, Aaron?
I just wanted to add, hopefully, well, before we approved that motion, that we could also ask about their commitments that he had put out that they were going to immediately start working on. If we could follow up on that, that'd be great.
I think that would still fall under policy and procedures. Okay. Yes, Sarah.
So Manager Adams, he mentioned that there are some other people he would be willing to put us in contact with. And I think that is a good gesture. And there's more that we can learn than just Chief Ticer. So maybe, is there a way that we could request those people or those groups from you so that we can discuss them for next meeting?
Thank you for your question, Commissioner Mayor. I think I'm going to tell the chief, be prepared for about an hour and a half meeting, because I think I would love to have five people stacked up for you to start talking to, but you didn't ask a question here, and I'm going to tell him, I'm going to assume it, is I will have him bring some data. He has data that he reports to the city council on crime statistics, because some people had asked about that before. So if it's that, policies, procedures of the police department, and by the time he gets explaining that to you and you're done questioning, I think you will have a very good meeting. And in the future, if there is a desire to talk to CIRSA, we need to schedule them ahead of time, because we have to have them come from Denver. They're in Denver, so we need to schedule them up and put them on the agenda, on the calendar. Also our HR risk department and HR, because in addition to these police officers being an employee of the police department, they also have a check that they get every month, and it has a City of Loveland logo on it. So that logo is for the city. So in that regard, you still have the HR department involved in them as well.
That's what I was kind of asking more about. I know that Ticer meeting will take a good chunk of time, I'm sure, but then moving forward, there's more to learn.
Yeah, there's 1,000 other people we can interview for sure.
Yeah, and I think I'm more willing to consider that request as long as it's understood that we're not going to get into specifics of this case yet. And I heard Commissioner Scholl say, yeah, later I'd like to talk to you about that. Of course you would. We think a big part of what this committee will be really good about is when the Jensen Hughes report is done on the review, they're going to have a roadmap and recommendation for us to go into the future with. And part of that is your review of that and say, how can this work based on what we've heard? So that's what I'm really excited about for future meetings too.
Thank you. And then real quick, just because we are running low on time, I am going to ask that we vote on an extension of minutes. So then that way we can get through requests as well as plan for the next agenda meeting. Commission meeting. So I would like to motion for an extension of minutes of time, 20 minutes, sorry, 8:20. So,
Second.
second, okay. And then all those in favor, please raise your hand. There's 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. And then those who opposed, just so we can be inclusive. Nobody? Okay, perfect. Then it passes. We will continue this meeting until 8:20 p.m. And with that, I would like to, I guess, move on to our next agenda item, which is requests. I do believe, actually, Catherine had a question first, and then Sarah. Yes.
And this is regarding the request that we've made. I know the city manager's report dated November 10th stated that we could create video recordings of commission meetings for public access. I think that's really important, and I want to find out where we are in that. Are we recording tonight, and will that be made available to the public? First question.
If I can clarify, Commissioner Barrett, these were a number of options that I presented. And so the question was, recording of meetings here was a question. It's being recorded now, but not by the city. So the question was, is the request to ask the city to do some type of recording, and how would that work? And then a rebroadcast it at later dates on even on our channel 16, which we can put on for future discussion. So is that your question?
Yeah, but it's not something that is in process, is what I'm understanding.
We are not recording these as a city. They've been recorded by an individual.
May I make a motion that we request that the city create video recordings of these meetings and make them available for public access?
I second that.
Any comments, questions, or concerns about the motion before we vote on it? Yes, Sarah?
So quick comment. I know Jessica was recording them before, and it's great that it's recorded and put out into the public. But I feel like for transparency's sake, coming from it, just like the general public, having a meeting being posted by just a committee member instead of the city, I feel like makes it seem like it's trying to be less transparent, and that's not our goal.
Agreed.
So I feel like it would be more trust building, right? That's what we're doing, to come from the city, not a commission member.
Yes, Ron?
My question is.
Mike, grab the mic. Not this mic, that mic.
We do have a recording that is available to the public. Do we have any way of knowing how many people access it, view that recording?
Hi, this is Commissioner Schneider. Chair Pryor, can I speak to that question?
Go for it.
Okay, so I was the one that recorded and uploaded this, and I have it pulled up right now. So since the last posting, we've had 15.1 hours of watch time of our last meeting. We have had 74 unique viewers and 122 views. That to me says that there's a lot of interest in our work.
Thank you. Ron, did that answer your question for you?
It did.
Perfect. And then, Catherine, would you like to reiterate that motion one more time for us?
Sure. I would like to make a motion that we request that the city manager create video recordings of our commission meetings for public access and make them available to the public.
And I second that. Oh, okay. I thought you had a question. Okay, if there are no more comments, questions, or concerns, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, those who are not in favor, please raise your hand. All right, so it looks like it passes unanimously. Okay?
So it's just a request, so that's.
Correct, yeah.
Yes, I got you. Okay, may I continue discussion? Okay.
Go for it.
So another thing that we sort of requested, but we never officially requested, was to have our own Facebook page or have some more postings through the City of Loveland page so that we can get more people here. Oh, do you want to do it? So
No, go for it.
Catherine's on the same page. She already wrote it down.
Yeah, she's already got it written down.
Okay, I'm gonna just pass it off, Catherine.
Catherine?
Chris, may I just ask if you were going to address that tonight in your report? The Facebook page request?
That one, I can.
Okay. Okay, so I would like to move that the city manager create or cause to be created a Community Trust Commission social media page on Facebook for public dissemination of information such as meeting dates and times, agenda, attachments, and access instructions for remote access. The page should encourage candid and thoughtful contributions from from Loveland residents, and it should be moderated by an administrative person appointed by the city, either a staff member or a volunteer, with the purpose of encouraging civil discourse on the page. Too much?
Yes, Mike.
I mean, look, I understand the need to be transparent. My experience is, especially in this community, is Facebook is really toxic.
Who is it? Yeah.
And I even local stuff. I just think sometimes when you're going to when we ask the city or even one of us to act as a moderator, we put ourselves in a position of being of needlessly being criticized, because then you have to start talking about, well, why did you exclude someone, or why did you not post that, or under what criteria do you use to discuss, or because and look, I work, some of you know, we work for the city and some public projects that and I, you know, I've been on the back end of some of those, and it's not fun. And so I don't think that relying on Facebook to promote transparency, to me, is not something that I view as a big priority. I think, honestly, if we focus on providing the highest level of content as the commission and in the meetings, I think that some of those things will take care of themselves. And I'm not going to oppose it. If people want to do it, it's fine. But I just have some reluctance.
I think my main goal, more was just to get the word out, because I don't think that we have 3 people who have come and we've got no emails. And I know that people have a lot of feelings, and that's what we're here for, is to help address the community. And I don't think we're getting the word out to the community. We all are here, and that's great. But I just feel like even just an announcement, hey, there's meetings and here's the email address if you have comment. We just have nothing.
And I do think, I mean, the city, through the public information officer, has, the city has a Facebook page
that they could
publish, and I would encourage, which they could do simply and easily, that those be. I just think I'm just really reluctant to think we need to create our own Facebook page, because it just subject ourselves to kind of unnecessary, I think, criticism. And we don't really need to. And I would just encourage that, the city use all of its social media resources to make sure that they promote, which I'm assuming, city manager, that you probably already do, but.
Yeah. So, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I would like to recognize our Office of Community Engagement Manager, who is hidden behind the screen right over there in the corner, and let her talk for a few minutes about how we are using all of these different platforms that you're suggesting.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Justine Bruno, Assistant to the City Manager, Office of Communication and Engagement. What Steve's talking and what actually Commissioner Scholl brought up is correct. So the city has several policies and guidelines on how we administer social media. And one of them is that boards and commissions do not have social media pages. So that is one. And the reason for that is there are a lot of policies, procedures, protocols, and just best practices that we want to utilize when we manage our social media, because that is how we communicate, engage, and outreach with the public, and that is the city's brand. So one of the suggestions that was brought up was having a commissioner manage that potentially. And with that, there would be training you would have to go through in order to make sure that you are adhering to all of our standards, aside from the fact that it is not a standard now for us to have a board or commission have a social media page. Because when you start using the city's logo, all of that, it is problematic. So with that, there's also First Amendment rights on social media, which even our most skilled moderators need extra training on. So we just had the city attorney's office, our deputy city attorney, give our social media moderators group, who all are listed, go through annual trainings, receive First Amendment policies, because there's a lot that you cannot do on there, and we would not want to incur a liability or risk for the city because we weren't managing that channel properly. To the point of promotion and what's already occurring, we do already promote our commission meetings, all of them though. So the Ad Hoc Community Trust Commission is grouped with City Council, with others, but we do recognize this meeting, and we do promote it through our stories features on our different social media channels, which include Facebook, Instagram, Nextdoor, just a litany of social that we have. And then it also is contained in our posts. And so we detail meeting times, locations, where you find the agenda. So we are doing some of that already. If there's a request to increase some of that, my recommendation would be that we use the city's existing channels for that, because I think even just the act of creating a whole separate channel will take, first of all, it would take reconsideration of our current policy. And then outside of that, it takes a lot of ongoing work and management. So there would have to be commitments and trainings and so forth. So that's a little bit of background on kind of what we're doing now and what we offer.
Thank you, Justine. Shane, I believe you had a comment.
My comment turned into a question because I totally understand that. So is it possible, when you say to highlight, does the city council have a little highlight where they say, hey, this next meeting, come join us for the city council, like an advertisement type thing? Because we either you either don't let anybody comment. I'm glad to hear that we can't have a social media page, because you either shut all the comments off, or it's a nightmare of who comments and who does it and who goes to court and who doesn't. So I totally agree that our commission could be out to the public a little bit more, but the city has way more powerful through all that stuff. So I don't know if you can highlight, if that's advertised a little bit more. I don't know how that works, but that's what my comment is.
Chair Pryor, can I speak?
Just one moment. I think Catherine had a comment, but then yes, you can be next.
Thank you. So if we're able to expand the current city page, can we make sure that meetings are announced with access and times and agenda before they were like this last meeting? And is there a way to encourage citizen comments and participation contributions to what they would like to, or at least tell them how they can contribute on that page as well? Make sure they understand, here's how you call in, here's how you show up.
Yes, those are some of the details we're already providing, but due to the nature to keep posts shorter and engaging so people read them, we do abbreviate a lot of that. I can certainly, if the request is made to the city manager to expand our content to include more promotion or more details of the Trust Commission, he will certainly take that under advisement and provide that direction to me, which we could come back to the commission and give a determination on.
Jessica was next, and we'll have Lori and Mike, and those will be our last two comments on this particular agenda item, because we do have to move forward. So.
Sure. So I just wanted to say I am signed up for emails for Loveland commissions and board meetings and city council meetings, and I have yet to receive an email announcement about a trust commission meeting. Also, getting access to meetings, easily understandable access for me, even as a commissioner, has been really challenging from a remote perspective. And the public doesn't have it. And that's a problem. So I support what Catherine's putting forward as far as making sure that our community gets the information they need to be involved with the work that we're doing, and that the city is doing its part to make sure that happens. Thanks.
Thank you. And then Lori, and then Mike.
Yeah, I was just going to maybe ask and or suggest, Justine, the utility bill insert. I mean, could we get a paragraph in there everybody gets those, and, it's sort of a captive audience. And then, and to the fact that we're gonna present to council January 25th, that will, obviously, more people watch council meetings than probably watch us. So that will be sort of another advertisement. That was just a suggestion.
Okay. And then Mike.
Yeah, well, Lori kind of, I was going to make that same suggestion about the utility billing, but the other thing I was going to mention too is, because I do planning, urban planning, kind of economic development private consulting in my professional life. And there's a lot of different, it doesn't have, I guess my point is it doesn't have to be Facebook. There's a lot of kind of software program or online programs, community engagement programs, and systems that we could access. There is a cost to it, and that I think are a little bit more focused, a little less toxic than Facebook, that where you can, instead of kind of posting kind of this free-for-all, where we could pose specific questions and provide information and seek kind of more targeted kind of comment, on different issues that we're working through. So I would ask that, either, that we ask the city manager or Justine, to maybe look in, or our facilitator to kind of look into that a little bit. And I have some suggestions of programs that we've used, that I think are very good, and you can get a higher level, I think, of far more quality engagement than you would get on Facebook. Because and when you say that word, I want to run and screaming. So
fair enough. Yes, Justine.
Thank you. So Commissioner Shull reminds me that we have a really great platform. It's called Let's Talk Loveland, and it's for exactly the purposes that you're talking about. So community engagement, dialogue, and what we can do, an option is to build a whole project basically around the Community Trust Commission. And so here is where we could get community questions. You can put materials out there. There's lots of options, but it's an in-between between a web page and social media. So it's like that hybrid area. And that would be one of the options I would recommend if this is something the commission wants to move forward, is to explore using that community engagement platform for these purposes.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, I was going to say that's great. And I really appreciate that, because I did provide my commentary on some traffic issues. So there was actually, if you go in, I would encourage everyone to look into it, because it's actually a really easy and user-friendly system that allows for public comment and public participation. I just think, I know in this day and age, getting people to come and show up is really hard, and it's just, no matter what we do, it's not going to happen, I think, to the level set. But I think some of these other systems and programs, I think, can help to kind of get people involved in a way that I think is more consistent with the times we live in. So
gotcha.
Sorry, I go on, but thank you.
And then Vice Chair has a quick comment, and then we will go to the next agenda item.
I'm on board with that. I use Facebook because it's the most general thing that everybody is kind of like aware of, but anything that can get our word out, because we are a community trust, and I don't feel like the community is part of it. Even finding this to apply for it was like, I wouldn't have been aware of it. Just, yeah. Yeah, had it not been for Facebook for me. So that's why I rely on it, because I didn't know about these other things. And so even getting the word out about the other things, maybe through the mailer, just generally getting the word out is all.
Sorry, Chair Pryor, may I?
Hold on, we're going to move ahead, and as far as the motion that was proposed, I know that we are going to make some changes to it. I would ask that we table it, at least for now, because I do want us to at least have some idea of what we want to do for the next commission meeting. So,
can I have 30 seconds, Chair Pryor? Super quick, already written. Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay. While we're adding or talking about accessibility and communication, I would like to add that we have Spanish language interpretation for our Spanish-speaking residents, and also American Sign Language interpretation for our hard of hearing residents.
Thank you. Okay. So I think that this might be some stuff that we can actually maybe put into our discussions for the next meeting, talking about just overall accessibility. I originally had it written down as advertising, but we'll just call it overall accessibility. But so I'm going to be honest, I think us having less agenda items this go around was very helpful. I think we got a lot more accomplished this go around than the last meeting. So I think that we should probably keep the agenda items at a minimum like we did today. And then based off of what we had talked about with the, having the walkthrough with Tyser and potentially other individuals as determined by the city manager and whatnot, are we wanting for the next meeting to focus in on what questions we want to ask and kind of the planning around that? Shane.
Great question. Here's my thought. I think either the 20th or the 3rd, whoever is in charge of how that blue team process works is going to answer 8 billion questions for us. Though if it ties to whoever that is within the city of Loveland's police department, because it all starts there. And I think if we learn that process as a commission and come up with questions of how that process, how does that get filed? How does that work? How does one officer report another officer? I think that's my opinion. It's going to tie our commission in together and give us even more focus before we bring in, let's say, a Chief Tyser.
Right.
I think we need to understand that process. So my proposal would be that on the 20th or the 3rd, we bring in someone from the police department who can intimately tell us how that process works so we get an understanding as a basis of all of our questions from that point forward. That's my thought.
Okay. What was that, Mike? Yeah, I think that was part of the motion.
But
Oh, okay. There's too much going on. Yes.
I'm sorry. One of the things I think we had approved a motion to extend an invitation to Chief Tyser. I think one of the things we need to know is I'm assuming that invitation will be delivered to Chief Tyser via the city manager. And I would think that we would want to know if Chief Tyser will be available at the next meeting, then I think we're going to have to at least be able to prepare and have questions ready.
Right.
Between then, and that'll affect the agenda. If Chief Tyser says, no, I can't come until January 3rd, or if I'm not comfortable coming until after the report or some response, I think that to some degree there's some flexibility, and I would kind of direct a question to the city manager about would he have any sense of the expectation of I know you don't have the chief's schedule pulled up, but how would you anticipate kind of providing him with an invitation?
Yes, I would expect, thank you, Commissioner, for the question. I would be delivering that discussion after talking to him some more about timing. It's not a PowerPoint, and all that doesn't just happen overnight. And so this is a busy time of the year for everybody. We're in the middle of evaluations and other things for the city. So whether he can put that all together with his team in one meeting or whether it's two is one thing. The other thing is I still am required to evaluate your request. So I'm not committing to it yet. I'm receiving it.
Right.
By your motion. So I think I have some time to kind of try and figure out how we're going to put all this together. And I've got 6 pages of notes of things that are in a policy and procedure discussion now that I need to make sure we capture based upon the comments that you all made. So
just real quick. So, and this was actually a note that Jeffrey and I mentioned to each other, that maybe for the next meeting on the 20th, we focus more on the pre-planning that would be involved with, having the walkthrough with said Chief Tyser, and then that would also give him more time to be able to meet with us, because I have a feeling that if we only give him 2 weeks notice, that's not going to be enough time. Whereas if we were to give him, what would that be? 4 weeks from now, I think that would, at least be a little bit better. Yes, Natalie.
That makes sense. It's an end of year, the whole thing. That might leave an opening for the CIRSA presentation if they're available. It's probably like a 15-minute discussion. I'm sure it's something they have already in the can. And yeah, they probably could just do it virtually. I don't know if this works. But that might be something so that we're not, it's a tough week, to get people. And then maybe do that and then have our planning thing if Chief Ticer is not available or, someone else. That was just a thought.
And to follow up with that too, I would like to reserve some time so that we can have a discussion about what the answer is to our invitation. I mean, I think because it's important, what I'm hearing is that the city manager is going to take it under evaluation and I'm not sure what that means or in terms of the schedule, but I think I'd like to at least be able to have some discussion about what that response is and what our expectations are. Right. Because I don't know, and for me personally, that I would request or want the police chief to come and provide a lengthy PowerPoint. I would rather have him come up and be able to just have more of a discussion, right, and allow us to kind of ask him questions. But I speak for me, not for the commission.
So what it's sounding like is for the agenda items for the next meeting, we'll have to play it by ear because, yes. Oh, yes, Tara, you had a question?
Actually, I was just gonna ask if I can make a motion for those documents I've been requesting for 3 weeks.
Yes.
So then when we have these interviews, we actually know what we're asking.
Yes.
Instead of just finding out.
Will you please name, yeah.
The documents that I would like for the commission to request from the city would be the crime statistics report.
Mm-hmm.
I also have, so that's the number one thing that I go with. But I had two. Another one was just on their disciplinary documents or their policies so that I would understand how it works and then ask the questions. And then I also have the complaint log, but that sounds like that might be thrown back burner. But just so that when we have these interviews, that I have a little knowledge going into them.
So you're wanting crime statistics, disciplinary actions, and what was the third one? I'm sorry.
Third one was a complaint.
Oh, the complaint.
Just because the public, that's what it seems like keeps coming up.
Okay. Any comments about her? Yes.
So I can clarify that I make sure I bring the right stuff. So the first one is crime statistics and data. We've got that. Yeah, because we taught that DDAC. So yes. Do you want it for a year, 2 years, 3 years? How many years do you want it for?
Let's do it for. When was the? Two. Yeah. Actually, let's do 3. We'll do 3. All right,
3 years. Okay, no problem. Thank you. So second clarifying question is on the disciplinary actions. Again, I'm bringing him here to talk to you about discipline and how it works, right? And then your question is, to the extent of that, what kind of stats are there on how many disciplinary actions are taken in a year or something like that? Is that what you're looking for too in that?
Yeah, mainly like policy of how they would handle a disciplinary action. And then also if we could find out over the last 2 years what they've actually done.
Okay. And then the third part, just to clarify, is that a lot of our calls are 911 complaints. So we have a really good log of when a person calls in, if somebody walked to the counter, they have a complaint about a traffic ticket and a lot of different things. So we have information on that, so we can provide data on that too for a 3-year history of complaints. And do you want it broken down a little bit of the types of complaints, if that would be useful?
I saw like the report, but I saw a report one time that broke it down to external complaints, state complaints, and internal complaints.
Right. We have a couple of different ways to provide that. So yeah, I can, 3 years will do for that too.
Last question from Catherine, and then we will vote on this, and then we're pretty much at the end right now. So
yeah, I'm wondering if we can please limit the complaints report, because I don't think we need to see the complaints that you described. We need to see complaints regarding excessive use of force, excessive use of or any use of deadly force. discriminatory patterns of arrest, patterns of harassment of youth, discriminatory non-enforcement of the law.
I thank you, Catherine. Chair Pryor, just to add one more thing. I don't know if the police department is going to have a history of discriminatory abuse. So potentially race should be included in who is being pulled over, harassed, all those things might help reveal that. Catherine, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So then we're looking for crime statistics, disciplinary policy, and all the dealings that have happened. And then complaints against the PD for things like excessive force, and we would like the demographics associated with that. Did I get all of that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, then I would like to motion for a request that we request the from the city manager the crime statistics, the disciplinary policy, and all dealings and complaints against the PD for excessive force, including the demographics for the past 3 years on all of those items.
Oh, yeah.
Second? Okay, perfect. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, all those who are not, please raise your hand. Okay, it passes by majority decision.
Right now, you have to pound the gap.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, meeting is adjourned.
Right.
No, yeah, I was.
You're the only board and commission that has an end date right now, by the way. So by doing that, you have to adjourn when you said you were, which is 8:20. Actually, we're over the meeting, but I don't want to get us in trouble with our parliamentarians. So.